10 years and thought it about time I start sharing my painting techniques and adventures. Subscribe to join me every week for a window into my art life. Hello and welcome to another week of Art Life. In this episode we are going to have our very own Bonfire of the Vanities, inspired by the 1497 Savonarola Florentine destructive fire where Florentines burnt art in the name of piety. I don't know, I'll go into the history later. So we have been clearing out, because you know I'm moving studio, the cabin where I used to store all of my paintings. A lot of them are rotting, so we've taken out all the rotting canvases and we are going to have our very own destructive bonfire this evening. Now the sun is setting, and it got me thinking about the way artists in the past have destroyed paintings and have like erased, stabbed, burnt, destroyed, given away artwork in the name of creative violence and a need to cleanse old work, or they've just had a very contentious relationship with their painting. I think Monet famously slashed 15 to 30 of his water lily paintings, so we can go into that in this episode, but for now we've got the pile of canvases waiting and we're gonna have ourselves a bonfire. Okay, so this is mostly my schoolwork from like 20 years ago, 15 years ago. It is heavily based on still life and landscape. Obviously I was very into 3D conceptualism. I had a thing for line drawings. This was my self-portrait when I was like 17, very moody, obviously holding a cup of tea. I do love tea. So yeah, it's just, we've gone through it all. There is nothing salvageable. Most of the stuff is ripped. We were thinking of trying to save some of the wooden frames, but most of them have rot inside and couldn't be reused. So it's going to make a satisfying bonfire tonight. You can see, yeah, just the way it's all kind of coming off. It is sad, but I think it's going to be cathartic. And historically, burning artwork and releasing it to the gods has created a renewed sense of creativity to some artists. So we're going to see if that's the case with me and I get imbued with a new sense of creative inspiration from blowing up all of these. Safety briefing. Before we get started, just to let you know that we are doing this safely and responsibly with fire blankets and a fire extinguisher, and we are on our own land in the country in the middle of nowhere, so nobody's going to be affected by this, but if you are going to do it at home, please do it responsibly and stay safe when you're doing it. So the earliest documentation in the extreme of a big bonfire of paintings is the Bonfire of the Vanities, with the 15th century fanatical Dominican friar Savonarola convincing Florentines to burn artwork in the name of negating an apocalypse, convincing his followers that for God to forgive the city of its excess and indulgence, it would save them from the apocalypse if they burnt paintings, any sinful objects of beauty and excess and exquisite material. So even Botticelli was one of these followers, saying that he burnt some of his paintings on the bonfire in Piazza del Signoria. Can you imagine? Historian David Rees apparently said that sinful objects were collected months in advance by his followers, and then on the day of the bonfire they dressed themselves in white, adorned themselves with garlands and red crosses, and went door to door asking for paintings to negate the apocalypse. If someone knocked on your door last year and said, if you burn art in your house, COVID won't happen, would you do it? I don't know, maybe. So yeah, it just shows that particularly at that time when the same was happening in Venice, there were lots of plagues, obviously there was lots of illness at the time. The church would blame the over-excess, the overindulgence of the courtesans in Venice, or the excess of society as a cause for their problems, and then blame the arts. With Monet, as we mentioned before, it was less about burning and more about stabbing his paintings. It was said that he stabbed 15 to 30 of his paintings, delaying his Paris exhibition. A close friend was said to have said it wasn't necessarily that he was angry with his work, he was just angry at himself that he wasn't achieving perfection. Whereas to us, the series of water lily paintings was actually perfection. There's about 250 of Monet's water lily paintings, apart from one which burnt down at MoMA in the 1950s. There's a lot of painting. Imagine how many more there would have been if Monet had been known for slashing, destroying and ripping apart his water lilies. He said they just weren't up to snuff. He'd been working on a series for 3 years for a Paris exhibition, and then just before it was about to be released, he decided that 15 or so of them they weren't good enough, and he just took an errant paintbrush and a knife and started destroying them. Can you imagine? He was very much a tortured artist. He didn't find painting peaceful, apparently. Historian Ross King writes in the book Mad Enchantment that he would rip them to shreds. He would put his foot in them. He would toss his paintbrushes and paints into the river if he was painting plein air and it wasn't going well. He had a real reaction when something wasn't just as he wanted it to. Perfectionism, almost to the point in a society at the moment where we're so keen on talking about mental health and self-care. He literally tortured himself, even though I'm sure they would be absolutely beautiful, and water lily lovers nowadays just cringe at the thought of him destroying these artworks. So even though it's not burning, it's still just an artist in a different sense, maybe not consciously just needing to just destroy something because it's not going how they want to. And I know I've definitely felt that with my painting. When it's not going how I want it to, sometimes I do just want to stab it, but I don't. So yeah, maybe sometimes I could try it. Take a leaf out of Monet's book. No, I'm not going to do that. So often people think artists are absolutely crazy to destroy work, and some people at home might be, what are you doing? Don't worry, we're recycling all of the things which are salvageable and literally just getting rid of the things which aren't. But yeah, it angers people. It evokes, particularly in the 1960s, it evoked a lot of post-war frustration. You think of book burning, you think of burning culture and art. It's one of the thing with the Bonfire of the Vanities. It's a tragic loss to lose things to fire. So it makes people who watch it feel viscerally frustrated and upset. Like even as we were doing this, we were like, oh, it just feels so wrong. Yeah, it does give a feeling. Jasper Johns famously, when he was 24, apparently destroyed all of his artwork because he said he didn't know who he was as an artist, and in order to figure it out, he said he needed to cathartically erase everything. Later on that year, actually, he had his first brilliant idea for his American flag, which in 1954 was his most famous ever art piece. So for him, it really worked and inspired his creativity in a massive way. Similarly, Agnes Martin did the same thing, although with her it was sort of said that she was controlling her image as an artist, needing to only have the things she wanted to represent her as an artist. Nothing else could exist. It was said that she hated her old work so much to a point where she would ask collectors to sell her back the artwork so she could burn it herself. During the mid-20th century, the art of destruction was emerging as a theme. It was defined by Gustav Metzger as auto-destructive. It was art reflecting the violence of the Second World War. So he said, I'm going to have to read this, the ideological nihilism of existential philosophy and rising tensions of nuclear warfare during the Cold War. It's a mouthful, but you can see where he's coming from. It was powerful and it kind of connected to a lot of things that were going on at the time. So, deliberately or unintentionally, contemporary artists are still doing this. Gerhard Richter burnt 60 of his works. Banksy recently shredded his auction piece. I don't know if you saw that in the news. He was meant to be talking about how you could literally destroy something that was meant to be worth a lot of money, but he was actually quoted saying that destroying artwork is a creative act. Destruction, I think the urge to destroy is a creative urge, is what he said. So yeah, it's still powerful, it's still relevant. Yeah, this was my year 13 art project. It is not something I've looked at once, and I asked around if anybody wanted it, nobody wanted it. I tried to think about saving frame, but even frame is really ruined. I couldn't use it and find anything for it. So yeah, it's gonna go. But it was fun to make. You learn. Doing paintings like this is how you learn. And I think, yeah, I'm feeling quite satisfied at just releasing all this stuff. I'm sure loads of people have done it when they finish school, they burn all their homework. I was always too scared to do that, so this is making me brave. And she's got a candle, so she wouldn't mind. It was also meant to be a self-portrait, but back then I couldn't draw faces, and I found faces too difficult, so I always left their faces blank. So, John Baldessari, the godfather of conceptual art, who died last year, sadly, in 1970, he burnt his art in the cremation project. So all of the work he made between 1953 and 1966, he took down professionally to get cremated, and he had it put in a bronze urn in the shape of a book. The urn was plaqued with the art life and death dates of the artwork, along with a recipe for cookies as well, randomly. He was said to later have made cookies with some of the ashes of the artwork, and someone apparently ate one, I don't know who, and I don't know if they tasted very nice. He also said after burning his paintings that he made a vow never to make bad art again. I think the following year he had an exhibition called "I Will Not Make Any More Boring Art." Yeah, it does make you think. So there's other artists who have burnt or slashed or recycled artworks. Francis Bacon, Louise Bourgeois. There's actually a huge list of them, and I think I won't overwhelm you on this video. I will put some links to articles below this video in case you're interested, or it's kind of sparked your interest in this topic, which is actually a much bigger topic than I originally thought it was when I started cleaning out my old rotting artwork. It did get me thinking though, because what I've been doing is really just getting rid of things which are acceptable to get rid of, whereas would I burn something which is actually what I consider my artwork now? It's a very different question, and I think I'm not a destructive person, so I'd probably say no, I wouldn't be ballsy enough to burn something like this. So I think this subject has opened up a lot of reactions this week, and it's quite a dynamic subject, burning and destroying artwork. It's a big one, it goes way back into history, and contemporary art, it's still relevant to talk about today in art practice. So yeah, I'd love to hear your comments below about that. If watching this video did make you feel a certain way about the kind of destruction of artwork. Obviously it's tragic to lose artwork, but at the same time understanding some of the reasons behind it, or what it can kind of birth in creativity, kind of helps you understand the whole of the subject. So yeah, would be really interested to hear your comments below. Please like and subscribe this video. I don't think I'll ever do that again, so it's a one-time bonfire. Yeah, and I will catch you next week for another episode of Art Life, where I just let you follow my life as an artist, and this is just one of the things I did today. Bye!